Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here. Now that my 2 informative videos are done for the day, it's time to talk about current events in the online fitness community. But today, I am actually going to keep this one very informative because I'm going to kind of disagree with Jeff Cavalier of Athlean-X. So let me put on my +5 out of weaponsmithing, work on skilling up my crafting a little bit, and let's talk about this. And yeah, this one has been by popular request. Quite a few people linked me this video. It was linked on my Facebook page saying, hey, you do Pendlay Rows. You promote Pendlay Rows. He's saying there are better ways to row, that he doesn't believe in that. And I think that's interesting coming from someone who actually works with real athletes. That's actually a big part of his profession, is working with professional athletes who need speed and strength. I don't know why he would have them do anything but Pendlay Rows as a form of row. That doesn't even make sense to me. And kind of the points that he made, I'm going to jump into this. It almost feels to me like he's talking to people who aren't serious about lifting hard. When I take what he said into context, now a lot of people say, well, he's got, millions of followers. He has a big following. A lot of people who follow him aren't going to be serious about their lifting. And the question I would ask, who in the hell wastes hours and hours watching YouTube fitness who doesn't want to be serious about their lifting? That doesn't even make sense to me. Why would anyone do that? They're going to watch 50 of his videos if they're not serious about their athleticism and strength and training hard? Why? That's stupidity. That's the reason they're not getting results, is that they are not actually training. If they're going to spend that much time watching those videos and they don't take the time to develop a basic strength base in the gym. And here's the point I want to make. He discussed the problems with concerns for the position certain Pendlay rows put the lower back in. Now, I don't know if he was incorrectly demonstrating a Pendlay row, or if he doesn't know how to do it. Like if he intentionally showed it wrong, or he really doesn't know how to perform the exercise. And I have to wonder that. Because, Jeff has a pretty good background in human anatomy and physiology. He demonstrated the exercise incorrect. And you guys watched me. I did, 10 sets of 3 this week with 265 on the Pendlay Row. You guys noticed that my bar position is close to the foot. My bar position is not that far away from a deadlift start position with the bar, because I actually know how to perform the exercise. And keep in mind, 265 is not a heavy weight. You don't need to lift heavy on something like a Pendlay row. That's the whole point. It's an explosive exercise. You lift a light weight. Now, some people say 265. Well, 265 is not heavy for a guy of my size and strength. That is lightweight. That's certainly not what I would be using on a standing row. Most people on a Pendlay row are not going to use more than about 50 to 60% of their deadlift work set weight. Okay? So, if you deadlift 500 pounds, odds are you're not going to work with more than about 225 or so on a Pendlay row. You're just not. And that kind of is going to go to the point of, so what if a person did the lift incorrectly? So what if they did the lift in a way that Jeff demonstrated? And I agree that isn't the best position to do a Pendlay row in. But if someone did the lift that way, why would that be a concern? Do they not have any lower back strength? Lower back injuries from weightlifting for people who actually do train don't happen from using light weight. And we know that from the strength and conditioning world. It's kind of like this. I've heard other people say this, that their biggest concern is that sometimes some strength and conditioning coaches out there really are just physical therapists masquerading as strength coaches. I have heard that statement recently by some big names out there in the strength and conditioning world. That almost sounds like what's going on here. Like, well, what are we talking about? And my point being, let's take putting your back in the incorrect position of concerned with lower back injuries. There are exercises specifically built around that concept that are time proven that world-class level lifters don't get hurt doing. You guys familiar with the stiff leg deadlift? Which is done with a round back. A lot of people aren't aware of that. A stiff leg deadlift is done with a round back. That's the whole point. A lot of people get that confused with the Romanian deadlift. Stiff leg deadlifts, the whole point is that you put your back into the wrong position with relatively straight legs and cat back, and you lift it up. That is the incorrect way to deadlift. Why do people do this exercise as a weak point training tool? People do it And I'm not saying novice lifters should be doing it, because they shouldn't. But people do this to build their lower back up, so that if their back does go into an incorrect position, it is strong enough to handle it if something goes wrong on a lift. The caveat being, you don't go over about 70% of your deadlift with it. And if you already deadlift normally and you do this incorrect exercise and you maintain weights that are below around 70% of your deadlift, people who practice this and train it correctly don't get hurt. They build that area of their back up. This is a very common assistance exercise in the strength and conditioning world. It is done by thousands of athletes, specifically to strengthen their lower back, and powerlifters specifically use it to strengthen the lower back. So in other words, if a person deadlifts 400 pounds for a few reps for their work sets, they probably wouldn't go over about 300 pounds. They would stay under 300 pounds on this exercise. And you know what? It works. It's like, you guys remember, didn't I used to do this exercise for a while on camera with like 450? You guys remember that? I used to do it with like 450 pounds, a few years back, as an assistance exercise I was using to build up my lower back. I never strained my lower back doing it. It didn't put it in a position to where it hurt. It never got hurt doing it, because 450 is a weight I could handle in the incorrect position, because I already had well over a 500 pound deadlift on work sets. So it was not a problem. Well, it's the same thing when you go back to something like a Pendlay Row. Why is this a problem? If you're using a weight that's 50% of your deadlift, why would your lower back get fatigued because you went into doing the Pendlay Row wrong the way he was showing? Unless you don't deadlift and you don't strength train. Well, it comes back to the point of, why don't you deadlift and strength train? If you're going to waste hours and hours watching your YouTube fitness channel learning to train, you don't do the most basic common exercises that everyone should be doing. Doesn't make any sense. Why aren't they? What he should be encouraging is, why don't you guys deadlift and build your back so that you don't have to worry about these sort of things? Now, the other thing that bothered me is that he went on and on about, well, this is the better way to hypertrophy your back. And this is kind of one of the problems I have with the online fitness world. Who are the only people who have to come up with variations and ways to develop their lat hypertrophy? Weak people. Weak people are the only people on the face of the earth who have to worry about lat hypertrophy. I'm going to rephrase that. In my personal experience of observing for decades the lifting world, weak people are the only people on the face of the earth who ever have to worry about this. I have never in my life met someone who's strong, who can actually lift respectable weight, who has problems with their lats growing. Well, they do have problems with it. Yeah, they get too big and they imbalance the rest of their body. In my experience, people who have a respectable heavy deadlift automatically have big lats, automatically by default, before they start training their lats directly. And then when they train their lats directly with any exercise with moderately heavy weight, their lats explode. Every single time. And I said that before, arguing with guys like Sebastian Sunit and Ian McCarthy, and they tried to argue otherwise. In spite of the fact that Brett Contreras put out some really interesting EMG data there, which kind of confirms what all of us have been observing for 100 years in the gym. Heavy deadlifts build massive backs, and that includes lats. Not saying other exercises don't add to it, but back to that point, I had Memo Helmsley or whatever his name argue with me, well, you're wrong because I got it where I was deadlifting 315 for reps and my back was still lagging. And it's like, no shit. How is someone who's been lifting weights for 3 years, or whatever it is he claimed he was lifting weights for, only deadlift 315 for a few reps? That is unfathomable to me. That's unfathomable to every single remotely decent coach I have ever met in my life. That you could have a healthy adult male who can only deadlift 315 for a few reps if they've been in the gym more than a year? Do they not practice the deadlift? Do they not program their training at all That is actually unimaginable. Because I have people, hell, even the same thing, I've heard Ripto claim that his average time for people that come into his gym, men who aren't disabled, who don't have major medical issues, the average time for them to hit a 400-pound deadlift in his gym is 9 months from the day they walk in. I have had thousands of people run free programs that I put out who are repping over 400 pounds by the end of the year. That's not exceptional, that's average. That's average for every single remotely decent strength program ever written by any coach anywhere. A 400-pound deadlift by the end of your first year is average. For people with average genetics, the people, everyone else who says, oh, they've got terrible genetics, that's average to do that. Exceptional genetics, guys hit 500-pound deadlifts in a year. Like walking off the street from having nothing but play basketball or jog or something beforehand, someone who's never done a push-up in their life, those guys with exceptional genetics hit a 500-pound deadlift in their first year. Guys have done that on my program too and reported it and documented it. It has happened because they were genetic freaks. 400's average. So in what world are people struggling to do this? People with average genetics can reach a 500-pound deadlift. That's totally average genetics can get you there on a decent program inside of 3 years. Okay, that's normal. That's normal. That's average. So it kind of comes back to the point of if he's a strength and conditioning coach, and we all know from observing over the years that guys with strong deadlifts who choose to do any extra lat work of any type normally have lats so big that they become a problem for them. Why are we talking about lat hypertrophy? Have people do some correct basic barbell movements. Use a strength and conditioning coach. Strength and condition people. Then we don't need to have this silly ass conversation about what angle of the arms gives the best lat development. Why do we need to have this conversation? Quit allowing people to be weak pussies. Actually strengthen them, and lat development becomes usually the least of their problems. That usually goes away as something that they ever have to worry about again for the rest of their training career. It becomes a non-existent problem among people with average genetics. Why do we need this conversation at all? It's absurd. It's catering to the weak. It's catering to the lazy who choose to be weak, and they want shortcuts to get around the fact that they're weak, and so therefore they have muscles that won't grow. Muscles that grow on anyone who lifts heavy, no matter who they are, without even needing special programming for it. Every single time. And the only person I've ever seen try to argue with me about this was the Memo Helmsley guy, and he was literally lifting girly weight that I was shocked a guy with his chest, shoulder, and arm development would be lifting. It's like he must have spent his entire first 3 years in the gym not training his legs and back. Like he must have done nothing but bench press and curls, which, explains a lot of things. So again, I'm not sure why Jeff chose to make this video other than he just decided to cater to people who want to be lazy pieces of shit. And I don't know why a strength and conditioning coach who also works with professional athletes would do that, unless that's what he wants to promote. Pendlay rows are fine. If you deadlift, Pendlay rows will not hurt your back, and they will give you a back so massive that you're going to struggle to find shirts that fit, unless you starve yourself and undereat. Simple as that. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.